This is Arc Raiders during its conceptual phase of development back in 2019. The footage you're seeing was one of the first things the studio made after being founded just 3 months prior. And while the demo itself looked great, the most important part is the studio behind the game, Embark Studios. The studio was formed in late 2018 by ex-DICE leadership due to a lack of creative control on the Battlefield franchise. They were tired of being forced to make just one project year after year. And when I say ex-DICE leadership, I mean a majority of key decision makers at DICE, including the CEO of DICE, audio and art directors, and many other key development veterans. This development story is one that I've never quite had an opportunity of learning about until now. Throughout the development of the game, if at any point EA got their hands on this studio and the game, it would never see the light of day. This is the story of Arc Raiders and how a studio born from AAA failures redefined how a game is made. The founders of Embark Studios, under the corporate umbrella of EA, felt constrained by the business and production models of large AAA development. Many core developers were tired of making Battlefield all the time and wanted to create a new original title, one that left the mold of Battlefield. Patrick Sutherland, the CEO of DICE, mentioned that when facing pressure to deliver a game on time, the common solution was to just put more people on it. This resulted in teams of 900 people, a process he called counterproductive to efficiency and to controlling quality. So, in late 2018 to early 2019, Patrick, alongside 5 industry veterans, left DICE and created Embark Studios in Stockholm, Sweden, just down the street from DICE. A significant but undisclosed portion of these early hires were veteran developers and executives from DICE and other parts of EA who were drawn to the new studio's mission. Their mission stemmed from the belief that large AAA development had become stagnant and creatively stifled, prioritizing safe sequels and franchises over new ideas. And this is a not so uncommon belief from those in leadership positions at big companies. I mean, just take a look at the story behind Expedition 33, where the same thing happened, just a couple of developers left Ubisoft due to the same exact reasons. Not only did Embark Studios now have the creative freedom to make whatever game they wanted, they also had technical freedom as well. You may have seen videos like this one, where AI agents teach themselves how to behave. Well, Embark Studios decided to experiment with this idea and take it to the next level. They used the same reinforcement learning techniques on their AI bots in gaming. The enemies in the final version of Arc Raiders we see were not hand animated by animators, but were taught how to move. And this is just one of the many technical innovations made by Embark Studios. In fact, to date, Embark Studios has not only continued to make technical innovations, but they've also open sourced a fair amount of their work for the entire gaming industry to benefit from. They are quite literally a tech company at heart that specializes in game development. So much so that back in 2019, they gave a talk during Google's Cloud Summit in Stockholm. With funding from Nexon, by February of 2019, Embark Studios had hired over 50 developers. The gaming studio was also now a tech company, but it was time to put their skills to the test, building an actual game. But before I continue, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel. Both are free and help me make more content just like this. After newly formed Embark Studios increased their headcount, they immediately began prototyping 2 new games alongside their technical experiments: Arc Raiders, codenamed Project Pioneer, and The Finals, codenamed Project Discovery. Arc Raiders began the prototyping phase as a cooperative, free-to-play action game set in a distant, futuristic world. Within just 3 months of the studio being formed, they already had beautiful concept arts and in-engine tests. Everything in this clip was created by 3 people over 3 weeks using real-world scanned data. Throughout 2019, the teams kept making prototypes and concept arts for both titles. The Arc Raiders team moved past the prototyping stage and into full production in the spring of 2020. At this point, Arc Raiders was their primary project, with The Finals being a secondary project. The team was focused entirely on realizing the original vision of Arc Raiders, a free-to-play, co-op, PvE action game where players work together to fight massive mechanical enemies, a game akin to Helldivers 2. And just as Arc Raiders began full production, the pandemic hit the world and negatively impacted most gaming studios. Embark, like most studios, transitioned to the remote working model. However, unlike large monolithic AAA projects, which often struggled heavily during the pandemic, Embark's smaller, technologically nimble structure allowed it to continue its work and quickly adapt to the changes in the world. This technological advantage was driven by their philosophy of automating content creation. During the pandemic, Embark's R&D team developed and fully implemented a fully proprietary tool for one-click photogrammetry. This in-house tool allowed artists to fully automate the process of turning high-resolution scan data of real-world objects into finished, game-ready assets in just minutes. At a traditional AAA studio, this process alone would take days. This dramatically increases the speed and fidelity of environmental assets being poured into the Arc Raiders world. By November 2020, CEO Patrick Sutherland noted that the studio was still growing and was close to 200 people now. Embark wasn't slowing down during the pandemic. They were actually speeding up drastically. And at this point, this is what Arc Raiders looked like. And for a studio that had just started a bit over a year at this point, it's a bit crazy for the game to look this good. Embark had also been doing in-studio tests of the game every single day for well over a year at this point. But they also began working on an early, unfinished build of the game that they can put in front of people outside the studio to gather feedback and insights on how the game plays. The rest of 2020 was spent refining their tech and continuing to build out their game. Within the early months of 2021, the quality bar of their machine learning robots that learned how to walk within a game world was achieved, and multiple AI enemies were added into the game. Both Arc Raiders and The Finals were rapidly approaching their targets, so it was time to reveal the game to the world. During the Game Awards in 2021, we got our first glimpse at what Embark Studios had been working on since the studio's formation, and the gaming industry loved it. This was during a time in the history of gaming where the top games were dominated by battle royales and everybody was sick of them. And here comes a free-to-play, purely cooperative third-person shooter, built by the teams who made Battlefield. The game was set to release in 2022, and everything was going perfectly so far, until the feedback started coming in. There was a giant problem with the game that internal teams at Embark had terribly missed. Early builds of Arc Raiders didn't quite feel as fun to play as the original 2021 announcement trailer indicated that it would. But we came to the conclusion after quite a long time. Guys, this game is not fun, said Patrick Sutherland. It was with this delay that the decision was made to turn what was originally going to be a PvE game into a PvPvE game. But the real question was how? Well, fortunately for Embark, this was right around the time that their former employer, EA, released Battlefield 2042 to catastrophic failure. And after the hellish development of that game, EA decided to completely restructure DICE and every studio that was working on Battlefield, including the incredibly talented developers and leaders that still remained at DICE. Since at this point, Embark was a refugee away from big AAA developers, they naturally and very smartly scooped up those who left DICE, including executive producer Alexander Gründahl, who was brought into the team in the last 6 months of its development. It took me a long time to understand what we were even trying to do, he said. When it came to looking at earlier builds of Arc Raiders, there was moments of fun, but it doesn't consistently gel. While CEO Patrick Sutherland said, guys, this game is not fun, Gründahl provided a more nuanced explanation of why the pure PvE game was failing and how to fix it. The fix to make the game more fun involved adding a PvP element to the game. It's also something a lot of Embark's founding developers swore they would never do, after leaving EA and DICE due to being tired of PvP. But if they wanted the game to actually be fun, they had to do something. So the entirety of 2022 was spent on redefining the core gameplay loop. Adding PvP to the game made the gameplay way more variable. With PvP, when you see another raider chased by a swarm of arc drones, do you go in for a kill? Do you lend a helping hand? Or do you hold back and feast on the valuable remains? Meanwhile, the development of their secondary title, Project Discovery, aka The Finals, was progressing extremely rapidly due to the technical choices made at Embark. Normally, in a large studio with hundreds of moving parts, this is the point in the project where it would either be cancelled or released as is. No corporation or publisher would want to spend their money on actually fixing the game. But in this case, the call was made to delay Arc Raiders to 2023 while the teams worked on the new PvP aspect. And since their second project, The Finals, was progressing so well, the teams decided to switch the priority of the two projects. It was a win-win for Embark. They would be able to push out The Finals faster, and Arc Raiders would get the attention and development time it needed. In early 2023, the focus would shift to The Finals, while the team worked on the changes to Arc Raiders. And by May of 2023, Arc Raiders had taken the shape of what Embark Studios believed to be a truly promising PvPvE survival extraction shooter, a game that stays true to the original Arc Raiders universe, and more importantly, a game that they were having immense fun with internally. But it was time to find out if the changes they had made were actually fun, with the most important test: putting Arc Raiders in the hands of gamers. After the successful release of The Finals at the end of 2023, focus shifted back to Arc Raiders. The next step for Embark Studios would be to perform a closed alpha test to get feedback on the game's core systems and loops. As Embark began letting players into the test builds, the feedback became positive about the new direction.
I think they really have. I genuinely think they have something really cool here. I think your average player doesn't give a fuck that it's an extraction game. They're going to come in, they're going to take a free kit, and they're going to have an amazing journey. They're going to play 1 or 2 raids. Who cares? Who cares about the extraction part? It's not even about that. Just experiencing the game is incredible. I don't know how to explain it. The atmosphere, the sound design.
While a lot of players who were originally excited for the original version of Arc Raiders had reserved thoughts of the game, now including PvP, it absolutely didn't discount the fact that PvE and AI elements still remained a difficult and significant threat. By mid-2024, it was pretty clear that the direction they were taking Arc Raiders was the correct choice. The game was actually great now that PvP was introduced, but this genre change also went against the free-to-play model that Embark had originally envisioned for the game. In August 2024, Embark officially announced that Arc Raiders would no longer be a free-to-play title. Instead, it was shifting to a $40 premium price point upon release in 2025. Executive producers on the title explained that this change was necessary because the premium model was a better fit for the experience they're building. It allowed the team to focus on creating an engaging, balanced, and replayable action survival experience, without the pressures of having to constantly design content to juice players for more money, as is often required by the free-to-play model. With the genre and business model settled, Embark began allowing the public to test the core experience. Embark launched its first public technical test in late 2024 on Steam for invited playtesters. The purpose was to assess the game's new PvPvE core loop with a bigger group and gather community feedback ahead of its 2025 release window. The test further confirmed that the redesign was working, as the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. And just 6 months later, another technical test was planned, Tech Test 2, which ran from April to May. This was a critical, large-scale public playtest. It was the first time console players were introduced alongside PC players. The team used this test to gather massive amounts of data on cross-platform performance, combat balance, and the complexity of the crafting systems, as well as player progression. The feedback from this test, just like the first test, was overwhelmingly positive, validating the pivot even further. The teams at Embark were absolutely booming with excitement since their project that they had spent the last 6 years building had finally achieved their last milestone. Gamers' praise and anticipation. In June of 2025, they finally set the release date in stone, October 30th. Executive producer Alexander Grundahl emphasized that Technical Test 2 gave them the best rehearsal needed for the final stretch of polish. Funny enough, down the street from them at DICE and EA, the teams were simultaneously putting the finishing touches on Battlefield 6. And someone discovered that if you mention Arc Raiders in the EA app's messaging system, it would immediately be censored. It didn't censor any other franchises like GTA or Call of Duty, only Arc Raiders. EA did not want this game to succeed. This transparent attempt to silence a competitor, which I interpret as sour grapes following the high-profile departure of key DICE talent, only provided Embark with a massive free publicity gain. But thankfully, Arc Raiders had something better than publisher backing: a great game. The positive feedback from the tech tests ensured it was already one of the most wishlisted games on Steam. Embark Studios brilliantly captured on the mishap, posting this on their social media accounts. This move cemented Embark's reputation as the player-focused underdog, while confirming that the long, winding road of development, marked by delays, genre changes, and brutal self-assessment, had finally delivered a title ready to stand toe-in-toe with the industry's giants. They weren't scared of EA. EA was scared of them, and they had the player numbers to prove it. As of recording this, the game is about to release. And if the Server Slam numbers are any indication of the success of this game, it'll be an incredibly successful launch for Embark Studios. And rightfully so. They've poured so much effort into this game, gave back to the gaming industry with technical innovations, and broke free of the norms set by the giant publishers. Good luck with the launch, Embark Studios. Everybody's rooting for you and your success. And if you want to know what happened to DICE and Battlefield after the loss of the great talent at DICE, I made a video going over the development of Battlefield 2042 and Battlefield 6. I'll have them linked down in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.